When I hear someone hijack the Holy Writ and eisegetically spin it to further their own narrative, most often I never respond. However, many decades ago, Reverend Jackson, you embodied a set of values that most of us admired. Unfortunately, for whatever reason or reasons, you've evolved, and now you've given yourself to a very divisive ideology that warrants a response. When addressing the 54th Dr. Martin Luther King's Ministers' March that was sponsored by Reverend Al Sharpton, you elevated yourself, sir, to godhood by stating that President Trump would not qualify to get into the kingdom of Jesus. According to you, he overlooks the naked, the poor, and the hungry. You also reference that because this president supports the laws and ideas that those who come into this country must assimilate, learn to speak English, as well as have a certain skill set that even Jesus himself would not have qualified or been welcome into the United States had President Trump been president during the earthly time of Jesus. Jesus, sir, personifies the law. He didn't come to destroy it, but to fulfill it. Even the ancient prophets stated that the very government would be upon his shoulders. When Jesus was asked by a group of his contemporaries whether or not he and those who followed him should pay taxes, in other words, support the laws of his day, he made sure his followers participated. Never, ever did he instruct them to burn down buildings, nor did he command his followers to drown out the voices of opposition by riots or other intimidation tactics. Yet, Reverend Jackson, you have been called this great champion of those who are victimized by failed public policies of insensitive elected officials. However, in the past 8 years, I can't recollect you ever amplifying your voice when black unemployment, for instance, was over 20+% among our youth, when there was 58% increase in food stamp in this nation, when 20% was no longer even in the workforce, when the wage gap for the poor was at a 40-year low, when 20% less owned homes in this nation, I never heard you voice any opposition. When over several thousand were shot in Chicago and 4,000 murders happened, I never heard you speak about it. When Americans were told that Obamacare would lower our premiums, when health care, for instance, even in my case, doubled, I never heard you speak once. I never heard you exempt from heaven the DNC party. After all, they gave us KKK, they gave us slavery, they gave us Jim Crow laws. I never once heard you denounce them and exempt them from heaven. Even when Planned Parenthood, orchestrated by Margaret Sanger, a white eugenicist who believed that blacks were inferior. By the way, the very policies that the DNC party right now participates in and champion. Not once have I heard you say that that party and those people would be exempt from heaven. Let me remind you, sir, that America is still the #1 humanitarian contributor. We give over $40 billion of our tax-paying dollars to things such as peace and security, education, human rights, health, democracy issues, economic development. That's what we do as Americans. Lastly, putting locks on our doors and buildings and is not really designed, sir, to keep our friends out, but to keep those out that are designed to prevent us from having a life of liberty. After all, these things are to deter those who are working against us. Please realize that our Vatican, it even has borders. Even heaven itself references the various gates that are there. Let me remind you, lastly, that a person's ability to get into heaven is not predicated upon those type of things that you've enumerated as you referenced Donald Trump, but it is accepting the finished and final work that Christ did when he bled and died and rose again. Reverend Jackson, let's work together. Stop being divisive. Stop using race to further your own agenda. Let's help make America great again.